Hello and welcome, Mutant Radio listeners. I'm Dark Alley. As always, I'm joined by Headbuddy and froks, as well as a new member to the Mutant Radio staff, Tim. I'm also joined by two very special guests to interview a very, very special guest, recording artist Jordaan Mason and Mr. Anthony Fantano, the internet's busiest music nerd, to interview this man, a true musical enigma. His band Shushu has been the forerunner of challenging, thought-provoking rock music for the last decade. I'm pleased to welcome Jamie Stewart.
Hi,
So,
Yeah, this is just an interview for, we have every biannually kind of like an online streaming music festival where you stream albums and everyone listens to them at once and kind of discusses them or chats about them. Or for the really popular ones, it gets really spammy, but that's aside the point. And we have started a kind of a tradition of sorts of doing interviews with musicians and celebrities of sorts that are popular on our board. And a lot of people are really
in
big
music
fans of
general.
Shushu, so we wanted to just talk to you, ask some questions today.
Thank you.
There you go.
Yeah.
That for your
How are you
intro.
feeling, though? How are you, Jamie?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Oh,
Good.
yeah, good.
I'm alright. Bit hungover, but I'm alright.
Me too.
Hey, look at that.
Hey, and I'm in LA
Oh.
too, so here we go. It's
Oh,
a party
alright.
over here.
Excellent.
I'm
There
feeling
you go, that's-
clean. I'm feeling clean and refreshed.
Thank you.
I don't know if this will be part of the interview, but we've been looking at your cat drawings for the past half hour or so, and like going over our favorites. And this isn't the best intro we could work into, but I want to say we all kind of picked
I'm
out a
probably
favorite cat.
happier to talk about cats and cat drawings than about anything else, so we're off to a good start.
All right. Let's
A
see.
lot of the a lot of the cats in the drawings seem to have suffered some kind of physical injury. Maybe the ones that have like there are a few cats that I noticed had like lobotomies or something. Like they had brain surgery, and then their heads had been stitched back together.
Oh, I think there wasn't a whole lot of conscious thought going into their appearance. It was largely fueled by manic distress and alcohol and sleep deprivation.
That's amazing.
I'm happy that you were able to see anything sort of cognizant in any of them at all.
Do you not in respect to just these cats, but your music and whatever art you're creating in general, get a lot of inspiration from stress, kind of like what you were saying? You know, those cats are a result of these three things. Do you see a lot of your the art that you make coming from that root?
I wish that it was not the case, but it is largely the case. It's really difficult for me to get any sort of writing done or playing done when I'm in a state
Right.
like that. But a lot of times, maybe deconstructing the results of that state, or when I'm a little more calmed down, we'll end up writing about that for sure. I think with the cats, was in a particularly wound up situation, and really needed to focus on doing something other than something that was not self-destructive.
Right, just keeping busy, that sort of thing.
Yeah, essentially. I had gotten some. I was having a really difficult time with my physical health and with my mental health in those couple of weeks, and had just gotten back from the doctor. And I think to try to cool down, had gone to a bookstore in Little Tokyo near where I live, and saw a book of some outsider art. And as the night went on, I started getting more and more unhinged. And I think because of having looked at that book of outsider art, it felt like potentially a way to, consciously or unconsciously, a way to sort of put all that negative energy into something other than, and forgive this emo proclamation, but
Right.
in the face or something.
Mm-hmm. Do you, with your latest full-length LP, you know, did you feel that a lot of artistically it was the same process? You were maybe taking some negative feelings from somewhere and sort of displacing them in some sort of like a cathartic way?
It's not really so much cathartic as it is almost organizational. It's not like working on music makes bad feelings go away, but it's a place to put them that it makes it possible to kind of get on with having a somewhat normal day.
Right.
So it's not really purging so much as it is to maybe renaming something, if that distinction makes any sense.
Right.
Currently, where you're at right now, location-wise, I mean, is it relatively easy to sort of have a normal day? Not that this is something that I attribute straight to something you did or said. But I mean, you know, your label and the people who were doing PR for you in this record did make a particularly big deal of the fact that you relocated to, you know, what they characterize as a really dangerous area to live, which I think might have been sort of more overblown in terms of a factor than it actually was in what you were trying to make.
Not well. Between you and me, I was not really super happy with that press release. But I mean, without trying to be melodramatic or self-aggrandizing about it, the neighborhood that I lived in when I moved about 2 months ago from the neighborhood I had been living in, which was where we wrote and recorded most of Angel Gutsworth Classroom.
Where's that at?
That's a neighborhood in Los Angeles that was a neighborhood in Los Angeles called MacArthur Park, which is
MacArthur Park. Oh, I'm not that far from there. Which actually it's pretty bad. Not gonna.
It is actually a really dangerous neighborhood.
I'm not too far from some dangerous places myself.
Where right now?
I'm in San Pedro.
Oh, okay. Oh, my good friend is in San Pedro right now too, who I'm having dinner with this weekend.
Yeah, it's right around the corner of Wilmington. There's like 3 gang areas that kind of converge into that area. Nice little spots.
It's complicated. Yeah, so I think it not greatly exaggerated. It is a rough neighborhood.
You state that you were unhappy with the press release, but on the album itself, it also says like the death of Shoo Shoo, and in a more recent interview, you talked about maybe this being. Yeah, no kidding. But you talked about like that maybe this would actually be. You were thinking about this being the last Shoo Shoo record, and I want to know where your head is on that right now. Do you think you'll continue making music under Shoo Shoo, or?
I feel real mixed about it. I mean, I talked to a friend of mine in the music business who is not really a manager, but it's sort of a quasi manager when I have somebody who I need to make. I have a sort of procedural question I'll ask him frequently, and I suppose the reason behind my considering not doing any more Shoo Shoo records isn't that I'm not interested anymore, but I was having a difficult time coming up with something to do that didn't suck, and I didn't want to put out a record that I thought was not the best record that we could do at that time. I'd rather just not do it, and maybe explore radically different types of music. And I asked him whether or not it was a good idea to, if the quote unquote well was dry for how we had been doing things, if it made sense to do something completely different. And he told me just to continue to use the name Shoo Shoo regardless of what we were doing. He said that we had been around long enough that at this point it would be kind of a nightmare to start over. And luckily, maybe in the last month or something, although I had maybe like a 10-month really serious writer's block, I think things are loosening up again a little bit. So probably Shoo Shoo will, for better or worse, persist.
When you go into, or when an artist goes into sort of a name change, or sort of alternating between different projects or starting a new project, is that what it feels like? Sort of really starting over from the beginning?
Well, for me, it doesn't really feel like starting over whenever we've done any sort of collaboration or side project. It feels like maybe a tangential continuum of something. I think with this last record, and I think with subsequent records, it will feel more like starting over, even though it is still the same project. If that makes any sense. Right. Just because I think that the sound and the sort of aesthetic and sonic trajectory that I think we're going to stay on is pretty different than what we had done maybe between 2002 and 2012. I don't think that there'll be a lot of reference to that era, I suppose.
Right. Well, on the
I'm still really happy with them, and I'm proud of having had the chance to be part of those records. I think it's time for us to explore some different things.
On side projects in general, do you feel like songwriting changes for you between writing for, say, a Shoo Shoo record and writing for even Ten the Swear Jar, or anything else you've been a part of? How does writing change between making a Shoo Shoo record or helping with some other record, or does writing stay kind of consistent between?
Oh no, I mean that's the point of working with other people, is to not have to write in the same way that, or not have to approach music in the same way that a Shoo Shoo record would be approached. There's a lot of rules that go into, for me, that go into doing a Shoo Shoo record that sometimes can be really inspirational, but sometimes can be confining in a not constructive way.
What's a major thing, like one of the first things that pops out in your head during the recording process that Shoo Shoo can or cannot do?
Probably the biggest rule, and this is not a rule for all music that
it's just for
but just for Shoo Shoo in particular, and for a type of any Shoo Shoo record, I think, that has lyrics on it. The rule is that all of the lyrics have to be about something real that has happened in my life or in the life of somebody that I know, or within politics. That none of the songs can be impressionistic or just like party rave ups or about a sort of fictional fantasy or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Jamie,
that's probably the main one.
I wonder about that actually, in terms of incorporating real people and real stories into your songs. Have you ever had any trouble with how to go about incorporating real things and actually presenting that to the person that it's about?
Oh, I have never pointedly written about somebody except once. And in that case, it was actually a nice song. And said, this song is about you. Initially, in the first few records that we took that approach in using real people's names, it was before I really expected any of those people to have heard of the band or know that it was happening. And then, not that the band is tremendously popular or anything like that, but I mean, it went from being entirely and totally unknown to now being somewhat known.
Right.
And then the transition to becoming somewhat known, it got back to a couple of people, and they were not particularly happy about it. So since then, I've been a lot more conscious of changing people's names. I mean, I know who it is, so when I'm singing about it, it's still coming from that particular real place. But I mean, the point has never been to try to publicly accuse somebody of something or to try to humiliate somebody. It was the point of using real events has always been to, by inserting that element into the song, hopefully when somebody listens to it, they can pick up on that aspect of it, and potentially it will be maybe be more meaningful to them. And I just kind of came to that approach just through being a fan of music and particular records that I heard. I knew that was the approach, and because that was the approach, it became more meaningful for me. So when we started the band, we decided to try to emulate that.
Right. You did this as well with the book I believe you were writing a few years ago, or maybe it's been even longer than a few years ago. But you said you had written, or at least you were writing a book about personal experiences.
I wrote it, but it's bad.
It's bad. You never published it or shared it. Like, what's writing been since then, or has it just completely been haiku based?
This was
What's
like
up with you?
More than 10 years ago. I haven't worked on it. I mean, I finished it and I gave it to a few friends, and
Right.
and the comments were not particularly supportive. So I mean, there's plenty of shitty books in the world. I didn't feel like I needed to add to the pile of shitty books.
Well, I mean,
So
at least you had people close to you who could give you those honest comments.
Yeah, I'm glad, frankly. And they were right. I'm glad that I did it. I mean, I learned a lot, and it was that book was actually essentially it's supposed to be pretty funny. So it was fun to write it, but I think long form prose is not my strong suit.
So no more like writing books, but haikus. Haikus.
I can deal with 3 lines. That's about as much as my brain can handle.
And the response to your haikus has been pretty positive as well.
It's been good, yeah. Those are much more free, actually. I don't feel the obligation to write about actual events in haikus as I do with writing shushu songs. The haikus for me are much more of a release, essentially, rather than sort of a way of attempting to wrangle pathos.
Right.
I wanted to maybe talk about something that is has to do with the reception of the new record. From what I saw, mostly because of the response or sort of the rant, I would call it, that you put up when you dropped the video for Black Dick. There were some reviews that sort of misconstrued your intentions with some of the songs, specifically that song on this record. And I was kind of wondering if you think that maybe some people misconstrued this song as being gratuitously sexual or sexist or racist because they just misread the song entirely, or do you think people nowadays are kind of looking for these sort of messages and wanting to be offended in this sort of way?
I totally like the idea of wanting to be offended.
It's a thing.
Well, I suppose wanting to be offended almost factors into the idea of what the song is about for me. And I mean, and I say this anytime that I go into a scree about what a song is about for me, that it's certainly, I do not mean to impose this meaning on the song for anybody. I mean, I would hope that somebody would come to their own conclusion about any song anywhere. I mean, for me, the idea of the song is about essentially asking questions about fetishization and about desire and about the sexualization of race. And whether or not those feelings are okay to have is they may or may not be. Like if you are of a particular background and you know that because of that background you have been fetishized, is that something that turns you on? And is it okay to be turned on by that? Is it okay to wield that as some sort of sexual power, or does that just bum you out and make you feel like a pointless piece of meat? And if you have fetishized somebody because of their race, is it all right for you to do that if the person you were with consents to that, or is it something you need to keep to yourself? Is it something you should keep to yourself? Maybe yes and maybe no. It is in making no proclamations at all, but just attempting to ask questions about desire, about those specific types of desire.
Right.
Yeah.
And I guess wanting to be offended is almost seems infinitely more perverse than having some sort of race fetish.
Well, I feel like, I don't know, for me personally, some of the views that I saw written about that song to me read like, okay, I'm offended by this, and I stated that I was offended by it, so I can pat myself on the back now because I'm a part of the solution, not a part of the problem.
It seems to me it is almost. I do not think that it is racist to state that you like a particular type of person if if you deal with that person as a person and can admit to yourself that you were compartmentalizing an aspect of a fellow human in a way that is purely and entirely sexual, but when you deal with that person on a day-to-day basis, you deal with them as a regular person. I don't think that there's anything racist in that. I do think that there is something racist in mentioning, the mere mention of a black dick or of white titties, of a white ass or yellow titties or a brown pussy. If just the mere mention of sexuality and race together freaks you out, that seems more racist to me than being honest with who you are and still treating your fellow humans as fellow humans.
Well, yeah, I think I don't know. To me, the track was interesting because in a really abstract way. The lyrics to me are so abstract that somebody outside of this culture might not necessarily, come to the same conclusion that you had when writing the song. But the idea of fetishization of certain races of people, especially in pornography. That's like an elephant in the room, when it comes to sexuality, especially in the internet age, when so many people are exposed to pornography, which I do have to totally compliment you on the fact that you did something that in my head was like my dream fantasy of if I ever had a band, I would put our first music video up on Pornhub, and yes. and you got there before me. So kudos to you.
It was actually, there was no plan to do it. It was just, it was completely practical. There was, obviously YouTube.
Of course.
Yeah. There was no possible way it could be anywhere else, but we didn't think about it ahead of time.
So you're just like browsing Pornhub one night and you're like, yeah, this is the place.
No, yeah, it wasn't like that. It was just, I guess this is the only place.
You might have gotten away putting it up on Vimeo.
Yeah, that's what.
No, we tried to, and they said it was way, way, way too far out.
Really? Well, there you go.
Yeah. I'm happy that it ended up on YouPorn. I think it's funny, but I wasn't smart enough to think about it ahead of time. Was
it YouPorn instead of Pornhub? Sorry, I mixed them up.
Oh, it might be Pornhub.
Oh, they're all the same.
Either one.
Friends. It might. You might be right. I can't remember. Although I should remember. I suppose.
If it's actually not on YouPorn, I would recommend actually uploading that video to every free
just
porn video site.
Just all of them.
Just all of them.
On the subject of angel guts, I wanted to ask, you've mentioned before that when you're depressed and not feeling well, you can't really write and you don't make music. But there are some specific songs on past records you've made while you were feeling in that state, like when you were depressed. I want to know if Angel Guts contains any of those songs which you made while you were depressed or not feeling too well.
I felt pretty shitty the entire time we were working on that record. If I'm really depressed, and I think this is the case with most people when they're really depressed, I can't do anything.
Right.
I wish that I could. I have a very close friend of mine who can only write when he's really depressed. But I just can't. I can't do a thing. It was the whole period of writing for Angel Guts was it was a rotten time. And I feel very, very fortunate that I am in a line of work where when I'm having a rotten time, there's something I can do about it, i.e. making a record. But I would rather have just had that year not completely suck.
Right.
If the bad times ended and the future was nothing but chirping birds and bright blue skies and beautiful sun rays shining down upon your face, where do you think your art would go?
Well, I mean, if my life is super great, it doesn't mean that the world is not completely fucked. Right now, I mean, the past couple months, things are actually okay. My head is, I think I have gotten out of this dark period. Some problems I was having in my personal life and family have resolved themselves. I'm actually doing pretty good right now. But, you know, think about the Congo, think about the environment, think about, you know, MacArthur Park, even though I don't live there, still exists. Whether or not my life is going well, I mean, those aspects of life, and pardon me for saying this, still weigh pretty heavily on me.
Obviously, not all artists feel this way, but you personally, as an artist, do you feel not necessarily that you're just drawn to it emotionally, but obviously you are. But on top of that, do you feel some kind of obligation to point out things that you think are ailing the world or the human race at large?
Oh, I don't know that I feel obligated to do it. It's the way God made me, and so far as how I deal with aesthetics. I don't feel like it's my place in the world to alert people to the horrors of human trafficking. I mean, I don't really think that music makes a tremendous, if any, difference in that sort of thing. It's the type of thing that is on my mind. And I am obviously not the only person for whom that is the type of thing that is, you know, on. Excuse me, my grammar got fucked up there.
No worries.
I'm not the only person who thinks about that sort of thing, obviously. So I think that there's a reason to write songs about those types of subjects. But I you know, I don't wake up in the morning holding my golden spear of truth, feeling as if it's be me or something.
Yeah.
I think that's a. I mean, I think that's a great response, and I totally agree with the idea that you know, even if you or anybody else were to make a song that somehow, I don't know, on the internet were to get as many hits as what the fuck, Gangnam Style, and make the song about how human trafficking is bad, and with very blatant lyrics. I mean, everybody sort of gets the message. You know, do we actually believe that sort of thing would actually make a dent in the idea of human trafficking?
Something that got 1 billion hits, it's possible. But I think it is probably not possible for a song that is about a subject like that to get a billion hits, or you know, or sell 1 billion records.
I guess what I'm sort of wondering is, you know, if music doesn't necessarily have that kind of power, it just sort of makes me wonder what people are actually going on about when they talk about the quote unquote power of music.
Well, I think that music has a certain type of power. I don't think, but I don't think that music has an inherent power to foment massive social change in and of itself. I think that music. I think if there is a social movement that is occurring, it can use music to get its already established message across. Or it can use music to maybe elicit a certain amount of emotionality and dedication that they have already established due to you know, political efforts. But I don't think that a song in and of itself can. I don't think the song can act in the inverse of that.
Right.
So I mean,
song can be used by people who are already actually doing real work, but not the other way around. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, absolutely.
I mean, there might be historical precedents that, you know, that go the other way, but I just, it seems unlikely.
Yeah. Obviously, there's kind of a point of inspiration from your own life, if there is any kind of suffering coming from it, or the world at large. But you know, and that goes specifically into your new record, especially the personal stuff. But what kind of mindset did you find yourself in when you were writing and recording for either Unclouded Sky or even that new Nina Simone covers album? Because you've dropped quite a few projects lately back to back.
Well, it was two real different things there for both of those records. Nina was entirely an attempt to say thank you to Nina Simone. It is very, very much a tribute record. Just for everything that I have gotten from her as a fan of music and as a musician. Insofar as her incredibly bold politics, just how the super weird things that she would do performatively at times, how beautiful her voice is, her incredible playing, how super intense she was and demanding of her audience. So I suppose the mindset for that was essentially gratitude, for lack of a better word. And I mean, also, the players who worked on it were so incredibly good. For me, a lot of it was as much feeling gratitude to them, to having been able to play on a record with such stellar musicians. And Unclouded Sky is I don't really talk about this part of my life so much, but I'm kind of privately very religious. And those are all, except for two of those, maybe one of those songs, religious songs. There's this in real internal conflict, or personal internal conflict about feeling religious. And I guess if one feels genuinely religious, there's a certain amount of optimism in that. Insofar as believing that there is some potential for hope in the universe, but at the same time, on a practical level, I feel obviously pretty dark and wigged out most of the time.
Is this more of like just a general belief in God or spirituality, or are we specifically talking about like the Christian doctrine when you say religious?
Well, actually, on that, I want to say, Jamie, you've stated that you're Catholic before, haven't you?
Oh, not. I didn't grow up Catholic. I grew up going to a Lutheran church, which is, as far as Christian churches go, like the graham crackers of Christianity. Like it's pretty unpassionate. And then my dad grew up Catholic, and then got into kind of more Eastern philosophies, specifically this Indian guru named Paramahansa Yogananda. And then my mom grew up atheist, and then became kind of a sort of normal, not annoying Christian. So my upbringing was kind of between those two things. And I guess now, like, Christians probably wouldn't think that I was a Christian. That's kind of my background, so it's what I know and what sort of feels right to me. But essentially, I think that anything that anybody really believes to be true is true. I mean, I certainly don't think that if somebody is not religious that they're going to hell. I don't even believe in hell. But for me, and this is just my personal thing, and I don't mean that there's this, I don't really believe in any sort of spiritual or religious absolutes. But I guess for me, probably in a pretty normal and traditional way, I believe in God with a capital G as this kind of positive sentient being. But as far as the route to communing with God or having God be a part of your life, I'm pretty flexible about it. I don't go to church that often. I might go like 8 or 9 times a year, but the church I go to is pretty fruity. I'm pretty loosey-goosey with being doctrinaire. My childhood was pretty shitty, but one of the good things that my parents did, or good for me anyway, was that religion was always something that you could turn to when you were having a bad time. They never really used it in a controlling way, or never talked about the fear of sin or anything like that. our life at that time was very hard, and it was something that you could lean on to help get you through it. I know a lot of people, unfortunately, when they're growing up, religion is the shittiest possible thing in their life, and their parents or their school or whatever just use it to make them feel shitty about who they are. So it's something that's pretty easy to abandon. But I had pretty much the opposite experience, so it's stayed a part of my life.
Do you feel like religion has kind of been something that you can lean on even into adulthood, into like those really bad times, even past adolescent life?
Yeah. Now it's still, privately still, and more internally,
right,
a pretty big part of my life. This is very definitely the most I've ever talked about in an interview.
Well, there you go, something new.
And again, I feel. I guess this is a certain amount of insecurity about it on my part, but I feel obligated to say that and I think I probably already said this, but I don't think that it is the answer for everybody, and I don't think that if it's something that doesn't feel right to you, that you should subscribe to, but in a very quiet and personal way, it's something that's good in my life.
Right.
And the record that you put together with Unclouded Sky, I admit that I have not heard it, only because I wasn't able to get a copy of the limited run, or I haven't gotten a copy of the limited run yet. But
I could email me and I'll send you a digital copy of it if you want it.
Well, the way that you approach this really personal part of your life on this record, is it mostly with reverence, or is there sort of that split between this spiritual and this natural world that you sort of talk about right here? Is there sort of a dichotomy there?
About the conflict about it. The religious songs on it are largely songs about death and dread, and basically pleading to God, or almost accusing God of having sort of forgotten about who you are or where you are. They're a lot about begging, almost. Begging for some kind of answer, more than anything else. It could very easily be listened to not as a religious record, but as a goth record, like a goth folk record, I guess.
As personally or emotionally, do you get anything from what's generally perceived to be gospel music? Not necessarily like what most people who are music snobs would classify as a Christian rock band, but
sure.
More like traditional rootsy gospel music.
I haven't listened to a ton of it. I have one record that's a compilation of gospel 45s from 1950 to 1970 that is called "This May Be My Last Time Singing." Which I listen to pretty regularly. That's probably the only record that I've really listened to of that type of music. Some of the songs on it I just like musically. Again, the playing is really cool. But there's one or two on there that I get some sort of kind of spiritual buzz from. It's nice. But it's not like religious music is not a regular part of my listening habits.
Right. You've stated earlier in the interview that you didn't believe in hell, but do you think of, like, in the Christian sense, do you believe in like a heaven, or is it just God is something that's outside of the Christian kind of mythos entirely?
Well, again, this is just my belief, and as I stated before, I don't think this is an absolute, but I guess I do hang on to the idea of there being a heaven, and the traditional idea of there being a heaven. But I also, at the same time, kind of hang on to the idea of there being reincarnation and a chance to try it again. I realize that those are contradictory, but they both make sense to me. And I guess like my about how long has it been? I guess about 10 or 11 years ago, my dad committed suicide, and I do, when I think of him, I do imagine him being in a heaven-like place or in heaven, which I think when I picture it in my mind, it usually looks like a picture from a like Carl Sagan book or something. Just like this sort of purple mist of cosmos.
So you've talked about your dad just there, but he was really into the music industry himself, and you've talked about kind of like what you always want to produce music. Like, I don't think you want to leave the business itself, but is there anything really that you dislike about the music business itself, like the industry? What do you dislike about making music in a political sense? Like,
it's so, I don't know. It's so boring to talk about. I cannot think of a dumber time to be a musician than now. It sucks. About the music industry sucks. It's so I don't want. It's such a boring. I could easily get really worked up about it. I'd rather not.
It's okay.
About it for the next 45 minutes, which I will. It's shitty though. I feel really bad for people in bands right now. And
well,
I feel
actually,
bad for people who are music fans right now, also just trying to find some new good bands.
Well, that segues nicely.
Go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Shitty bands right now, and how shitty the music industry is right now.
Right. You said last year that. Oh, do you want to go ahead? It's cool.
Do you feel like it's the fact that music blogs and corporations and labels have this kind of monopoly over what we're listening to?
Well, I mean, that's always been the case.
Right.
These are all perfectly reasonable questions, but I just don't really give a fuck.
No, it's okay.
I think I need to not give a fuck, or I'll go bananas.
So last year, this is the final thing on it, but last year you said, like, you expressed your disdain for modern music, or, like, music coming out the last few years. Everything's kind of sucked, that's what you said. Everything's kind of shitty still. Do you still, like,
but it's a tremendous effort to find something good.
Absolutely, right.
Which I haven't always felt this way. I didn't feel this way as a teenager. I didn't feel this way in my 20s. I didn't feel this way 5 years ago. But lately, it seems like way more of an effort to find something new. I mean, there's obviously, 3,000 years of human music that you can dive into. That's wonderful. But it's disappointing. One wants to find something that changes one's life. One wants to find more than maybe 3 new records in a year that you can really lean on for inspiration and some sort of, redemption, or any of the long list of reasons that people devotedly listen to music. It's frustrating.
Do you think though that that's maybe sort of the future that sort of any aging music fan has to look forward to, no matter what point in their life that they've been born? I mean, well, when I say aging music fan, I mean anybody who's not like a teenager, and is a music fan. Anybody who's like deep into their 20s or 30s. Not to say that they think music gets worse, but like by that point, your tastes are pretty defined. I think at that point, that's when your tastes are most defined.
I don't think that. I think if you were a real music fan, your tastes become less defined. They become more refined, in that you demand quality.
Yeah.
But I think that you become more open to more different kinds of music, even if you're a real music fan.
I was using define in place of refine. Sorry.
Yeah, but I don't think that that's the fault of the listener that there's shitty music. I mean, listeners don't make music shitty.
No, definitely not. Well, I mean, some of them demand shitty music.
Think of the era. If you were, let's say, if you were a teenager in the 50s, and then and you were a devoted music fan, and you're in your early 40s and the 80s. Think of how much amazing music happened during 40 years. It's not difficult to find a long list of bands from those eras that have essentially defined pop culture from then on. And in the 90s, it begins to sort of very slowly and gradually thin out. I think it's much more a symptom of the era than of people becoming uptight. Or
Right. So you said you have enjoyed a few new records here and there. What new bands? What are the like? Are there any new bands that you've listened to, say, in the past 5 years or so, that you really have enjoyed?
I like
sparse?
Hacks and Cloak. Hacks and Cloak. I think is really cool. Crystal Castles I really like. Health is really good. Marissa Nadler I totally love. I'm not great at lists, but off the top of my head, of relatively new bands, those are some people who I think are doing really cool
We could
stuff.
maybe include Andrew Jackson Jihad in there, perhaps.
Andrew Jackson Jihad. They've been around for a long time, though.
Well, yeah, but it's a great segue to my next question, which is about your collaboration with them. See,
Well,
look what I
I'm
did.
not listening. I'm not. Although I am getting to be friends with Health and
Right.
Crystal Castles. I'm not listing, people that I'm close friends fans to.
Right.
I believe you're also touring with a brand new experimental rock band that just put out a new record called Swans.
Circuit
Brand new
Diaz.
band.
But we're touring in the U.S. with Circuit Diaz. She's amazing. Sorry, I interrupted you. What did you say?
Oh, I was me.
Yeah, you, Anthony.
Yeah, me. I was saying I believe you're also going to be touring with a brand new experimental rock band, and they have a new record out. Their name is Swans.
Oh yeah, those guys. Yeah, it's super new. I don't know how in the last, just existing for only 3 months, I don't know how they've managed to put out so much great music. Touring with Swans. I leave for that on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
How's your voice been since you put off touring for so long to kind of recover vocally?
Oh, now it's real good. I just got back from a 6-week European tour, and prior to that, I think I saw like 3 doctors and 1 psychologist, and through great expense and effort, it is much better than it ever was before.
I say you just got back.
Oh, sorry.
Nice.
I was just going to ask, because this is something that's always been on my mind. I mean, for people, especially like yourself, who tend to push limits vocally, is sort of having a doctor like that in your everyday life kind of a must? I also hear people like Tom Waits talk about that sort of thing.
I think it really depends on the singer. A friend of mine is real good friends with Mike Patton, and has toured with him a few times, and says that he doesn't do anything. He doesn't warm up. He doesn't take any pills or herbs or anything. Wow. He doesn't take care of himself on tour, and he just has the macho, indestructible voice in the entire world. And then I'm friends with Nika from Zola Jesus, and she sings real hard also, but it takes exquisite care of her voice in order to do what she needs to do. Sees just like Skype vocal sessions with her voice teacher all the time. Does them on tour. Doesn't talk very much while she's on tour. Does exercises constantly. So I think it really just depends on the individual physiology of the person.
Mm.
So you say that you were recently on tour in Europe, and we saw that you actually played a show in Russia. Can you speak to your experience on that?
Oh, it's actually our biggest audience is there. So the shows there are always really, really good. Mm. The people there, it could not be sweeter or more enthusiastic or more generous to us. I'm supposing that part of your question has to do with the political situation in Russia right now.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. But touring is so totally insulated. We flew there, went to the club, played the show, went to the hotel, got on a train to the next city, went to the club, played, went to the hotel, and went home. So it's not like we had any real interaction with Russia. We were in a club and a hotel the entire time. So,
but you say you have a considerable fan base over there?
It's definitely our biggest audiences there. Yeah.
I'm sort of wondering, like in the internet age now, especially with you with you also saying that now is a terrible time to try to start up and be a musician. What creates that sort of thing that you could have this niche of fans in this one country that, I mean, your fans in the West probably wouldn't assume you have a large group of people following your exploits.
Well, I will say, even though I was just bitching about it, it probably would not be possible were it if not for it being the internet age, obviously. I mean, we don't have a record deal in Russia, and the European label that we have doesn't distribute records there. I mean, the only way that people have gotten into our records there have been through super expensive imports or through the internet. So I'm
not fully aware of how the political situation over there might impact this, but I mean, are they getting a hold of your stuff through a lot of illegal downloads? Can they even buy music legally over iTunes?
Things are fucked in Russia, but it's not like it's like Russia in 1985 or something like that.
Yeah, it's still a country.
Well, yeah. I'm just wondering if they have any kind of limitations on their internet access at the moment.
Oh, that I do not believe so. It's not. I mean, it's not like it is in China. It could be very soon, but at the moment, with the exception of the fucking insane imperialism in Ukraine and the completely absurd sort of new wave of homophobia there, it seems basically like being in any country in Eastern Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And bear in mind that this is from an incredibly superficial perspective that I have, but I didn't get the impression that I didn't feel uncomfortable there in any way.
Right. Oh, that's good.
All right. I wanted to ask about touring. You said before that kind of it's the most boring thing you do, like just 23 hours of waiting and then the show. Is there anything you have done touring-wise to make it more interesting? Like, do you ever visit the locales, like, explore the cities you're visiting, or doing things to kind of make it less mind-numbing while you?
Oh yeah. I think anybody who tours a lot makes every effort that they can to have it not be boring by bringing 90 million things to read, bring a bunch of video games, and when there's a minute to do it, trying to see something, but there's just usually not time. You get up in the morning, you pile into the van, and then you drive for 6 hours, and then the sound check is at 5 o'clock, and then you do the sound check, and that takes an hour, and then you eat dinner, and then I have to take a nap, so I take a nap for an hour, and then we play, and then go to bed. But if there's a short drive or a day off, then certainly we make an effort to try and see what there is in the world.
Jamie, I wanted to ask you about cover songs. In particular, your cover of Fast Car, which I know that you started playing again a couple years ago, and you changed the lyrics a bunch. But in general, I guess I'm curious about what it means for you to take someone else's song and make it a shoo-shoo song.
It's in every case with any song that we have covered. Actually, I have to backpedal on this. With the Unclouded Sky songs are except for one, are all covers, and the approach for that was different. But with every other of the songs that we've covered, all the Nina songs, and I think the other maybe like 20 other recorded cover songs that we have, or however many it is, it's a lot. It's always been a song that we loved and we're trying to say thank you to. It was none of the songs we thought, oh, we could do this better, or how could we make this into a shoo-shoo song?
Right.
They're all, and all for different reasons, essentially tribute songs.
I guess I'm curious about Fast Car because I've seen what you've said about it in the past when A Promise came out. But I guess I'm curious what brought you back to that song and what made you change the words this time.
I think on the original version, I think the words are changed in almost
a little bit, yeah.
Yeah. It might be slightly different just because the circumstances of the song have changed. Or the circumstances in my life as a relation to the song have changed. I still feel the same way about it. It's a completely remarkable piece of work, and I will never get over the fact that a song that is essentially totally about hopelessness, is part of the like light rock pantheon. I mean, you could hear that at Spago eating with your grandma. It's everywhere. It's one of the bleakest songs that I've ever heard in my entire life. The lyrics are incredibly direct and incredibly simple and could not be more depressing. I don't know how it snuck past
obscurity.
Keep commercial radio boring.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe it was just too beautiful, and they could not resist its perfection.
I think that's probably true.
Speaking of things that had kind of odd popularity surges, Fabulous Muscles. It's been about 10 years since the album, and like relative to the success of A Promise and Knife Play, it kind of really shot up. Do you have any feelings about Fabulous Muscles and why it kind of attained a popularity that you hadn't before?
Well, my feelings about it are I feel really grateful that I got to be a part of a record that a lot of people seem to have liked. I mean, a lot relative to Shushu standards.
Right.
But I mean, as to why more people like that record than other records, I don't know. Probably. I mean, I think this is the case with any record that attains a certain amount of popularity. It's just timing. I mean, I don't know if that record had come out the year before or 2 years after, if it would have done as well as it did. I mean, and bear in mind, I mean, it didn't do that. I mean, it's certainly the most popular Shushu record, but it's
right.
not. It's way more popular than whatever list of other underground bands you could think of.
Right.
Yeah, I don't have any idea. I'm glad. I'm really happy that we made something that people got something out of.
Well, speaking of older music, you've been playing some songs from the first 3 or 4 albums more recently, and I'm wondering, how is it like for you to revisit those songs? Is it any, like, since you do write from a personal angle, does it feel different or wrong to kind of re-experience some of those songs and play them live and at different venues?
Well, I think because they're about things that I have a personal connection with or about a personal experience, I still feel a connection to them in a different way, or that the context has changed. But I mean, when you remember something that has happened,
right.
Certain things have no effect on you in any way whatsoever, and certain things still affect you. But 10 or 11 years on, how it affects you changes, but it still affects you.
Right. I was thinking, since some of the songs are so emotional and like very, I don't know, kind of raw, and then to kind of experience them years later, if it ever feels like it's not right to play them, or like.
Well, there are certain songs that just, the feelings at those times were so specific to that period, and I don't feel that way at all anymore. And we don't play those songs. It doesn't feel honest to do it. But I mean, I guess a case in point would be a song like Ian Curtis Wish List, which we're never played live before until this last European tour. And the original subject matter of the song for me now is completely and totally irrelevant. But the overarching idea of feeling humiliated and feeling foolish, and because of that, feeling as if your existence is sort of hilariously pointless, that unfortunately still feels relevant to me, or feels relevant to me in a very different way now than it did at that time.
Speaking of that track and some others, sort of going back to just generally your past material again, at which at this point in your career there's a lot of. Also, I know in addition to Unclouded Sky around Record Store Day, you also put out that Best of Shushu compilation, which I mean, considering best of is in the title, I mean, it's the best of Shushu. I mean, what for a band as experimental and as adventurous and as I guess as sometimes obtuse as Shoo Shoo, what goes into deciding what the best of this kind of band is? I mean, do you go into it with sort of an ear toward accessibility, an ear toward what you think fans or sort of newcomers to the band will enjoy hearing, or these are sort of personal favorites that you sort of have a strong emotional connection to?
There was two approaches to it, and it's not a total best of, it's a best of from the beginning until 2012.
Yeah, like 2002 to 2012.
Yeah, so like a 10 years best of or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, we part of it was the label that put it out. There was a few songs on it that the guy who runs it is a big fan of, so we put those on there. And then it's two LPs. One LP is all the kind of pop songs, and then the other LP is all kind of more experimental pieces. I think if it was just going to be one and had to be a mixture of the more kind of abrasive, far out stuff and pop stuff, it would have been a lot more difficult. But by really compartmentalizing the approach, it wasn't so difficult.
All right, so kind of on that note, and previously said there are some songs you just won't play live. I'm wondering if there were any songs you've written for Shoo Shoo that later didn't make it onto an album, or like were too personal to play for you. Has there been anything that's been just too much?
Oh, sorry. There's a lot of stuff that didn't make it on records because it sucked, but nothing because it was too personal to do.
Right. It feels like a lot of what Shoo Shoo does is kind of make you discussed this before, but you kind of make wrong music, or like it doesn't need to be perfect or kind of what everyone wants. It's just it's its own thing. When you go into making a Shoo Shoo record, do you try to go for a new sound? Like for Dear God, I Hate Myself, you actually used the Nintendo DS to create music. I was wondering, like, is there anything new and experimental you do to kind of make your music now from a recording and kind of?
Well, we're just at the beginning of trying to figure out what to do for the next record. So with each one, well, not with every record we've done, but probably with the last 3 or 4, there's been some thought about what the quote unquote palette would be of sounds.
Right.
For the last record in particular, it was much more codified than anything we had done before, and I really enjoyed that approach. So for this one, we're right now trying to figure out what the next sort of codified palette will be. But for me, it's a really constructive way to get started. I hate to be a pain in the ass, but I got to get back to work in a second. I probably got to go in like 1 minute. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Thank you for spending time with us. And
it's good to talk to you. Really good questions. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. And like, hopefully, we didn't ask you too many things you were too annoyed about.
No, not it was really thoughtful. I really appreciate it.
Awesome, thank you. Jordaan, did you have anything else you want to say? Because I know, like, we kind of talked over you.
Oh no, it's fine. I just sat and listened. It was great.
Yeah, Jordan. All right, thank you. And Jamie, you've been really, really great. And thank you so much for joining us today.
You guys too. Thanks very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Sure. Thank you. Have a really great day.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.